Recently, a new article came out in a big time journal about the safety of water birth. And I was thinking I needed to share the results with you, but it would just probably be like an update to what I've shared before. But then I went searching through my old episodes and looking at the titles and stuff, and I did not have one episode on water birth. Now, I may have mentioned it here or there, but I didn't have an episode solely dedicated to talking about water birth. How is that even possible, y'all? Well, I'm going to fix that today. We're going to talk about why water birth is a great option for most people and why you can rest assured that water birth is a safe option. Let's go.
Are you a Christian woman yearning for a beautiful, joyful pregnancy and birth with a focus on God, not medical tests? Are you worried the birth you want isn't possible and you're tired of being treated like an accident waiting to happen? Hey Mama, I'm Lori, host of Your Birth God's Way. I'm a certified nurse midwife now, but I wasn't always. After working for nearly 20 years in the broken maternity system, I too was in your shoes wondering how I could have the birth I wanted and that I felt God meant for me to have. I found a secret that has actually been known since the beginning of time. God's way is the best way. Spoiler alert, God made us and our babies, and He knows us best. He designed us perfectly for pregnancy, birth, and nourishing our babies after birth, if we work with His design and not against it. In this podcast, you'll learn how to be healthy and have joy during this time of life that will be over before you know it. So if you're ready to reclaim your birth and your babies for His glory, go turn on a few episodes of Bluey for that little one on your hip so you can put the focus back on you for a few minutes with me.
It's review time. Quick review today comes from S. Berry, 1987. The title says, Love the Perspective. I love hearing from Lori's perspective, first as a Bible-believing, Jesus-loving Christian, but also as a former hospital nurse who now operates as a natural physiological birth midwife. Thank you so much for that, S. Berry. I'm glad that you appreciate the perspective. One of the reasons I started this podcast is because when I went looking around for the perspective that I offer, it really wasn't out there. So I'm glad that you are enjoying that. And for the rest of you out there who have not left me a review yet, as you can tell from the fact that I talk about these every week, they mean so much to me. They encourage me. They help me to know that I'm helping you, and they help me to find other mamas just like you who can also benefit from the information the same way you have. So if you haven't already left me a review, head over to Apple Podcasts, leave me a quick 5-star written review. It helps if you write something in, and you might hear your review in this spot on a future podcast. If you don't have Apple Podcasts and you can't find where to leave a review on your podcast app, that is fine. As you probably have heard, I'm on YouTube now. So if you can head over to YouTube, everybody can do that on whatever phone or computer or whatever that you have, Roku, Apple TV, all the things. Wait, not Apple TV, I don't know. But all the things. You have a way to get to YouTube. If you can subscribe to me there, that helps. If you can leave comments on the videos, that helps in much the same way. So that gives you a few more options for those of you who aren't Apple people. That's fine. This gives you a way to encourage me and also to help me, again, find more mamas like you. Okay, so like I said, I'm kind of a little bit like dumbfounded that I did not have an episode on water birth. We're on what, episode 143, I think? And I thought sure that I had talked about this. And I know that I have in episodes here or there, but I didn't have one like with it in the title to where if you search for it, you could find it. And I don't really know how that's possible. I guess it's one of those things that I just kind of assume everybody already knows, but assuming is not a good policy. I'm sure some of you know what I'm referring to. So I apologize that I have not talked about this before, but we're going to fix it today. I really thought, I mean, it's been 2.5 years. I would have thought for sure I had done an episode on this, but like I said, guess I didn't. Uh, what can I say? Things just slip under the radar. So anyway, I actually had all 3 of my babies in the water. So obviously I'm a big fan, and I honestly can't imagine doing it any other way. So how come I haven't talked to you about it? I don't know. I'm going to get off of it now. Okay. I'm so sorry. We're going to fix it. All right. So this is just going to be kind of some basics going through like what even is water birth? What does it all mean? Why you would want to have a water birth? Is water birth safe? Who's a good candidate for water birth? That kind of thing. Okay. So we're just going to kind of go through some basic stuff. Some of this you're going to already know. Some of it might be news to you, but my overall goal is just to help you kind of understand why water birth might be something you would want to consider. Okay. So what is water birth? Well, it's kind of obvious, right? It is exactly what it sounds like. It is giving birth in the water. There is water labor. Some places will offer laboring in the water. Some hospitals will offer you to labor in the water. But then for the birth itself, you have to get out. And that doesn't make sense to me at all. Never has. I don't get it, because the most intensive part of birth is the actual birth, not the labor part is intense, but it's not, it all builds to the increased intensity of the birth itself. So, you get all good and you're in a flow, shall we say, you're managing labor, you're coping well, you're handling everything well. And then when it gets the most intense it possibly can, hey, let's take away your coping mechanism, right? Doesn't make sense to me. But the reason I'm highlighting that is that's not exactly water birth. Water birth is when the birth happens in the water. It means the baby emerges underneath the water. Now, why do people want water birth? If you're a person that's never considered this or never heard of this, why? You're like, what? Why would I do that? Let's talk about some reasons why water birth is considered a good option for a lot of mamas. You know, if you're like me, when I think about things that are peaceful to me or things that relieve my stress, I think about going to the ocean and just listening to the water. I don't even have to be in it, just listening to it. A lot of times, the sleep apps on your phone that play music for you to, or play sound for you to listen to while you're going to sleep, it's water. It's a babbling brook. It's, a waterfall, something like that. Water is considered very calming and soothing to a lot of people. And that's just the listening part, being in it, feeling it. The sensation is just different. And many people consider that to be very soothing and very relaxing. Another reason why water birth is considered so great by so many women, and this is one of the big ones to me, is because water allows for easier mobility and position change, because you're just floating, you're buoyant, you're just kind of easy to move. And I remember in my labor, a lot of times we talk about in natural birth that one of the best things you can do is change your position a lot, right? Well, when you are pregnant, for anybody in here who has been all the way through to term, you're not pregnant in your first pregnancy is what I'm getting at, or you haven't, had miscarriages and haven't made it to term, you feel huge. You may feel good, you may not feel, bad or miserable, but you feel really big. And, you've seen women waddling and things like that because you've got all this weight in the front that you're not used to having, and it's just awkward a lot of times. And yet here we are as midwives, sometimes doctors, doulas, nurses, whatever, telling you, hey, we just need you to move here. We need you to change this part of your positioning or whatever. And it just feels impossible because you feel like, I can't move, I'm so big. Well, when you're in the water, that all goes away because the water supports your weight and helps you to float. And I don't remember which birth it was in, but I remember having this idea about movement in one of my labors. And I remember thinking, this is so much easier. And I took two fingers, just if you're watching on YouTube, you see I'm holding my pointer fingers. But I just turned and put them down on the bottom of the birth pool and just lightly pushed, and my whole body floated up. I think I was sitting kind of like Indian style or crisscross applesauce, whatever you call it. And my whole body just floated up. Like I was able to lift my whole body with just a little bit of pressure on two pointer fingers. And that just illustrates how easy it is to do the position changes that you need to do when you're in labor, when you're in the water. So that alone is a big reason for a lot of people. Another thing to consider is that the water offers counter pressure. You don't think about water pushing against you. You don't think about it being pressure, but water is powerful. That's why they tell you don't drive through the water when it's covering the road, because you don't know how deep it is, and it's so powerful. It can move you. A very small amount can move you. So think about that kind of pressure. Even when you're just sitting in a still body of water, if it's a pool or a tub or whatever, that water is putting pressure against your perineum, which is the skin between your vagina and your rectum. And it's the skin that we tend to worry about tearing when birth happens. And that pressure, that counter pressure, is thought to help decrease tearing in water birth. It also, the warmth of the water against that tissue makes it softer and more pliable. And so it's that nice softness, the pliability, the warmth, and then that counter pressure all kind of add up to actually show that there's a decreased risk of tearing during birth when you're in the water. The baby is born into the water. This is another upside to water birth. The baby comes out into the water, not into the cold air and the bright lights. It's coming out into the water. Well, that baby's been in water its entire life, its entire gestation. It's been floating in water. And so when the baby is born and comes out into the same atmospheric pressure as it's been in its whole life, it eases that transition. It makes it a little smoother, a little bit less jarring, a little bit less drastic. So it's just a little bit more of a peaceful entry into the world from being inside all these months to being outside. So then when they come up out of the water, it's a little bit more controlled. It's not as startling. Another aspect is that it decreases mother's perception of pain, whether that be because of just the mental aspect of it being relaxing, or again, being able to move around, work with the pain a little bit better. Moms report feeling less pain when in the water. Now, I can't tell you if I felt less pain because I was only ever in the water. I won't say that it was pain-free by any stretch. It was incredibly intense. It was still a lot, but I felt like I could deal with it. I could not imagine having to come out of it. It just being there in it helped me to remember that it was better to surrender and not fight it, if that makes sense. And so being in the water allowed that to happen. It leads to less use of pain medications. Obviously, if you're able to have a lessened perception of pain, then you're not going to necessarily go to needing pain intervention as often. The relaxation, as I kind of just mentioned and alluded to it, the relaxation that the water offers tends to cause you to have less of the fighting of the contractions. Let me explain that a little bit more. In life, when we feel pain coming, let's say, you're about to have a wreck, or let's say you just sprained your ankle, done that many times. Let's say, there's something coming that you perceive is going to cause you pain. You tend to brace for it. You tend to kind of tense up, and that tensing actually makes it worse. And the same thing goes for labor. So like your uterus is a muscle. It's an involuntary muscle, but it's a muscle. And when you tighten up your muscles because you perceive this pain is coming, contractions usually kind of build. They're kind of like a wave. And as they build, it's coming. So some moms will tense up. And when you tense up, you actually tense up muscles that work against the other muscles that you need to do their work to push the baby out. Okay. So if you tense up, you are fighting the involuntary muscle action that needs to happen. Okay. And being in the water causes relaxation that tends to help moms not tense up like that, so that labor can progress more naturally, so that then that tends to lead to a higher rate of vaginal birth. In addition, labor is actually on average shorter in the water. There's less intervention, especially, and this one, stands to reason, but there's a lesser risk of an episiotomy. Well, why is that? Well, a few different reasons. One, because of the counter pressure and all the things there that we talked about allowing for that stretching to happen. But hey, guess what? When you're in the water, nobody can get near your perineum with a pair of scissors, so they can't cut it. Isn't that nice? Because episiotomies should really almost never happen. So being in the water decreases your risk of having we just need to give the baby a little bit more room, even if the baby didn't need a little bit more room. Okay, so you got a less risk of episiotomy. Additionally, moms feel more empowered, they feel more in control, and they feel more satisfied with their birth. Now, that could possibly be because the water birth tends to be in locations where they feel that way anyway. Care is more personal, it's more individualized. So it's possible that that's why they feel more empowered and more in control, but it's hard to say. Could it just be the water birth? Is it the location? Is it both? Either way, these are good elements to bring into your birth if this sounds like something that's good for you. Now, let me say, we're heading into the section of who is a good candidate for water birth. I had a client who had a water birth in the past, and she specifically said that the water, the stimulation, it was just too much, and she did not want water birth for her second baby, and that's fine. For her, it wasn't relaxing. So that's where the individualized care comes in. You need to have the type of labor that works for what works for you. Okay. So for her, water birth was not a good option. She wasn't a good candidate because she didn't want it. Not everybody's going to want it, and that's fine. But for most people who like water, who associate water with peacefulness and relaxation, it's a good option. So who is a good candidate? Well, most people are. What would be easier to address is who is not a good candidate. And as I sat here and I tried to brainstorm who's not a good candidate, I thought through a few different things that I thought that the medical world would say. Most of them actually aren't bad candidates for it, But I thought, hey, this would be a funny question to ask ChatGPT. Now, I don't use ChatGPT much, but every now and then I'll ask it things just to kind of see what it says, just to kind of like see where this whole AI thing is going. And I asked ChatGPT who was not a good candidate. Now, when it gave me this list of answers, it also gave me the sources from which it pulled the answers. Some of the sources weren't even there. There wasn't a source. So I don't really know where it got the ones that it didn't have a source. Some of it did have a source. And so it's going to be I think you'll find a few of them a little bit funny. The first one it lists was high risk pregnancies. And that included it listed things like preeclampsia, diabetes, heart disease, kidney disease, chronic mental illness. And those were according to Baby Center. Okay, it's a real, robust educational facility there, right? So these things are very often pulled from doctors' comfort levels. Okay, that's the type of information from which these articles are being written. So most physicians are not going to be comfortable with someone with preeclampsia or diabetes or heart disease. I mean, they're not going to be comfortable with their labors anyway, but especially in water. So these people are probably not going to be offered water birth. Most of them are going to be too high risk to receive care from midwives, so they may not be able to have a water birth. However, I don't know that that's necessarily evidence-based. Things like chronic mental illness, to me, you need even more help coping with stressful situations, so the water to me might be a benefit to help with that. Preeclampsia, if you're on medications for that during labor, then yes, water wouldn't be a good location for you. But if your preeclampsia is not severe, doesn't have severe features, and you're not on medications and things like that, I don't know why being in water would be a bad option when that also will help to relax you, which will help to bring your blood pressure down. Diabetes, if you're not on medication, why diabetes would put you as a bad candidate for being in the water? Got no answers for you unless they're just scared of the big baby situation, which they usually are. The next one they listed was multiple pregnancies, meaning you're expecting twins or triplets or more. And that was according to WebMD. Didn't surprise me. It's actually not always a bad option for water birth for multiples. It just depends on your provider, and are they well trained and competent with dealing with the birth in water. It's happened many, many times that people have their babies in the water. In fact, I want to say Anna Espinoza that I interviewed, I don't know, it's probably been over a year ago. I want to say she had her twins in water. Lots of people have twins in water. So I wouldn't say just, offhand that multiple pregnancies are automatically risked out of water birth. It just kind of depends on the situation. Breech position, thought that was interesting. That is not necessarily an automatic situation making you not a good candidate for water birth. In general, if you're going to have a vaginal breech birth, you're going to be with a type of a provider who's probably comfortable with water birth anyway, and they will be able to give you good direction about whether that's a good option for you or not. That one actually didn't have a reference, so I don't know where they're pulling that from, but like I said, the likelihood that you're going to be able to have a vaginal breech birth is kind of low, not because it's not a good option, but because there's not that many trained providers. You should be able to have a vaginal breech birth, but if you have a provider who supports vaginal breech, there is a decent chance that they're also going to support water birth, so hopefully that one would not be automatic for you. The next one it listed was preterm labor. That was according to Nebraska Medicine. I can understand that to some degree, because of the intervention that might be needed immediately after birth, but I don't know why water birth would prevent that necessarily. It just kind of depends on how preterm. That really would be what it came down to. I mean, if you're 36 weeks and 3 or 4 days, it really shouldn't risk you out. If you're 28 weeks, it's a little different. Maybe it should. Maybe. Again, is there evidence to support it? Not really sure. We're going to get to evidence in a minute, by the way. Next one is infection. It listed maternal infection as reasons not to have water birth, things like herpes or, quote, other maternal infections, according to BirthWorks International. But there were no references cited. I went and looked to see where they were pulling that from. I did not see any references listed at all. To me, and this is just my little simple brain, I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but the solution to pollution is dilution. So basically, if you have an infection and that infection is just on the skin or just right there local and the baby's passing through it, it's all right there. Whereas if you are in water, there's some dilution happening to that infection, which might actually decrease the likelihood that that infection happens. Again, I don't have any evidence to support that, but the way I look at it, it makes sense to me. I don't know why infection alone would cause you to be risked out of being able to have a water birth. Excessive vaginal bleeding. This might be the only one that I was like, yeah, we got to get out of the water at that point. And the reason for that is because when you're in water and you're bleeding, it is very, very hard to quantify how much you're bleeding. If your bleeding is enough to be worried about, or if your bleeding is really no big deal, unless it's just barely anything, it looks awful in the water. Now, it might not be awful, but the problem is we can't really fully tell. And so if there is bleeding that's unexpected and of an amount that is questionable, you might be asked to get out of the water so that it can be better monitored and make sure that we're not letting you bleed too much. Interestingly, the source for that one, the one that I can see is like, yep, that might be a good reason, was supernanny.co.uk, the Super Nanny website. Think about that. These, educational sources, supposedly, they all have reasons that don't really make a lot of sense to me, but the Super Nanny website, it had one that made sense. Do with that what you will. The next one was the need for continuous fetal monitoring. That was from the health site, was what it was called. From my perspective, knowing what I know about how little continuous fetal monitoring has done for labor, in fact, it hasn't improved outcomes at all. I don't see how that's a reason. If you have a baby that's in really bad condition and you know that and you've proven that and they really do need continuous fetal monitoring, well, yeah, you can't be in the water because you can't do continuous fetal monitoring there. But the need for continuous fetal monitoring is a very limited number of births. Use of epidural, it didn't have a source, but obviously, yeah, if you've got an epidural, you can't be in the water because you can't feel your legs, because you can't hold yourself up. It's not safe. Duh, right? That one didn't even need to be there. And then the last one was previous C-section. It also did not have a source. My question is why? Why would you want to take that option away from someone who's had a previous C-section just because they've had a previous C-section? It'll help them deal better. It'll help them not tense up. It might be a benefit to be in the water. So that one I didn't agree with either. All right, so now let's get on to the actual evidence. So recently, I'm talking like in the last month or so, I think it's been, a huge systematic review came out, and I've got it in this blue folder, so it's going right in front of the camera there for a minute. But I put it in there to keep it all together. I'm just showing you the front page of it. It's from the American Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology. That's the journal from ACOG, which is the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology. So this was a little bit of a shock. The authors are MDs, CNM, so same thing as me, certified nurse midwives. There's a DNP, that's a doctor of nursing practice, a PhD. Those are usually, your people who just study stuff and put the studies together, and then more MDs. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 MDs. 5 MDs actually put their name on a study saying that water birth is a safe option. How about that? Good stuff. So this study was a systematic review. So what that means is it wasn't like a study where they enrolled participants and said, hey, we're going to randomize you, meaning we're going to randomly select a certain group for water birth and a certain group for not water birth. It wasn't that kind of a study. It was a study where they went out and they looked for all the studies that existed for water birth, pulled them together, and then found what commonalities they could find out of that. And that is a way that researchers will, for like a study like this, you can't do a double-blind, placebo-controlled prospective trial for water birth, because to be blinded and to have a placebo means that you don't know which treatment you're getting, and neither do the researchers, and so the results have no bias to them at all. Obviously, if you get randomized to have a water birth, you're going to know you're having the water birth because you are having a water birth, right? Or if you don't have it. So there's no way to really do the high level study that a lot of people want to know if something is safe. So this is a way to kind of compile information in a way that you can kind of draw some different conclusions based on what's been observed in previous studies. And when you have a lot of little studies and you add them all up into one big study, then you get bigger numbers that are more statistically significant. Okay, I hope that makes sense and doesn't confuse you worse. But it was a systematic review. It brought together all of these studies together. There were 52 studies that were included. A lot of them were taken out for various reasons. Maybe they didn't qualify for whatever reason. If you want to know all that, you can go read the article and learn all about it. If you're into all that kind of stuff, that's fine. I'll try to remember to put a link for it below. But The interesting part of this is that this study, or this systematic review, showed, y'all, I know how hard it is to know if something being sold to you online is worth anything these days, because there is so much counterfeit junk floating around. And beyond that, it seems like everybody has a course to sell you. So I want to help you make an informed decision about your childbirth education the same way I want you to make informed decisions about everything in your maternity care. That's why, for a limited time, I'm giving you free access to the first module of my Christian childbirth course. You can see it for yourself, for free, for a whole week, for absolutely no charge. And you don't even need to enter in a credit card number. The first module is going to give you a look at the underpinnings of the whole course, which is God, the creator of everything, including the creator of pregnancy and the birth process. He made it. So we should look to him for our guidance. And the first module lays the foundation for that. If you're not familiar with me, I'm Lori Morris, and I'm a certified nurse midwife. I used to be all medical, and I worked in the medicalized maternity care system. But with time, I saw the truth, and I became a midwife who attends home births and who had all her babies outside of that system. That gives me a unique perspective because I've been on both sides. I can help you understand what happens on the medical side while fully preparing you for the natural side, including how to navigate decisions and interventions while also wrapping you in Scripture to remind you of God's truth, that you are made to do this no matter what the world says. There is no other course out there like this one, and I want you to see it for yourself. Go to go.yourbirthgodsway.com/course free trial and get signed up today. Again, that's go.yourbirthgodsway.com/course free trial. That water birth does not increase the risk of negative outcomes overall. Okay? Does not. There was only one outcome that was possibly increased, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So, maternal outcomes, and I'm not going to go over everything that it covered, like what it was looking for and all that. It's a lot. I mean, this study, when I printed it out, it's actually from March 2024, it says, but for some reason, it just came on my purview just in the last few weeks. But it was, I don't know, 50-something pages, I think, with all of the graphs and charts and everything. So it's a lot, and I can't go through all of it. But I just want you to appreciate the takeaways, okay? For maternal outcomes, they looked at infection. There was no difference in infection rates from water birth to not water birth. They called it land birth, okay? So dry birth or whatever. No difference in risk for infection. For postpartum hemorrhage, there was a decreased risk on the water birth side than the not water birth side. So there you go. That alone, to me, is a great reason to have a water birth, because postpartum hemorrhage is one of the things we worry about the most. Now, why that is, it's decreased, not exactly sure, but perhaps it has to do with the fact that there's not as much managed third stage. I don't know. But whatever it is, there's a decreased risk on the water birth side. Okay, now let's look at neonatal outcomes. The first one I'm going to mention is actually the only one that had an increased risk. It is umbilical cord avulsion. What that basically means is that the cord tends to tear before the placenta is out. Okay, it's usually an accident, and somehow a pressure causes that to tear. Why does that happen with water birth more? I tried to think of what that could be. My main thought was that when you give birth in the water and you bring the baby out of the water, because of the fact of the whole water situation, maybe it makes people nervous about the baby coming out of the water and going back in and causing water to get in places where it's not supposed to be or something. And maybe they just pull the baby out a little bit more assertively, aggressively, and before checking to make sure that the cord is long enough to do that. And maybe that causes the cord to tear. I was thinking, well, could it be because of the exposure to water? But no, the cord's not exposed to, well, the cord's already exposed to water in utero, and it's not going to be exposed more out of the water because it's already been exposed. So it can't be that. So that's really the only thing I can think is just that you're trying to pull the baby out above the water level. So if you're in a tub with a deeper water level and you pull it too far, then you can tear the cord. That's the only thing I can figure. There are ways to deal with that. It can be a bit disturbing when it happens. Obviously, if that happens, then the baby is not going to get its cord blood because there's just no way to make it happen. But usually you're able to find the ends of the cord, clamp them off, and everything's okay. It's just one of those things that this is the only thing really in the study that it said did have an increased risk. Okay. Everything else is positive. All right. Neonatal outcomes, the risk for a lower APGAR score, that's the score where we look at kind of how the baby's doing right after birth at 1 minute and then 5 minutes and then 10 minutes if the 5-minute score is low. The risk of those being low is reduced in water birth. The risk of neonatal infection, it is reduced in water birth. Again, that kind of plays back to the maternal infection. If the risk for neonatal infection is lower, that would tend to suggest that any infection they may have caught from their mother has been diluted and they're not getting it now. Just kind of me connecting dots. The next one, so I just did infection. Aspiration requiring resuscitation. There's a reduced risk for that. Now, this is interesting because a lot of people believe that if a baby is born into water, it might breathe water in, and that would cause a problem. Obviously, for us, if we brought, who have been living outside of, our mother's womb for many years, if we breathe water in, it's a big deal and it can kill us, right? Well, you have to think about the fact that the baby has been in your womb for the full gestation in water. So for them to come out into water is no big deal for them. They've been breathing water. Their lungs have not started to breathe air yet. Okay. So there is no aspiration. They've already been used to that. Now, once they come out of the water in any way, like if their face comes out of the water, they can't go back in the water. Then they might aspirate. Once they come out of the water, they hit that atmospheric pressure change, meaning the difference in air versus water that stimulates their body to start the breathing process of breathing air. Then all bets are off. You can't go back in the water. But at the moment of birth, that's not a problem. I mean, there are some great videos you can find on YouTube where the baby, or maybe not YouTube, but maybe Waterbirth International, some of the places like that, where you can see the baby came out. They had a clear pool to where they could film through the sides of the pool. And the baby was out, eyes open, just kind of looking around and checking things out, not needing to breathe. Remember, the cord is still attached to the placenta, which is giving the baby oxygen constantly from that time until the placenta stops doing that, which, so you don't leave the baby under there for all that long. But it can stay, a minute or two sometimes. So with the risk of aspiration requiring resuscitation is less. So that tells you right there, you don't have to worry about the baby breathing in water and getting sick from that. Okay. And then finally, there is a reduced risk of NICU admission with water birth. So you got all kinds of reasons that you can now know, according to this systematic review of 52 articles in this meta-analysis going through all these different outcomes, water birth is a safe option. You don't have to think that you're putting yourself or your baby at risk just simply by choosing water birth. Okay. Now, how do you manage water birth? So that's a big one for some people because it's like, what am I going to do? I don't have the space, or I don't have a tub or whatever. Let's look at how you manage it. We're going to look at an already existing tub. So like in your house, you have a bathtub and you want to have it there versus a blow up tub. Okay. If you don't have a bathtub, there are birth pools that you can either buy or maybe rent from your midwife or doula or whoever. And they are an option for water birth if you don't have a tub or if you don't want to use your tub. Okay. So let's talk about first the already existing tub. What are the pros of using an already existing tub? Well, the pros are it's really easy to get the water in and out because it's already, configured for that. It's easier for that initial fill. It's also easier for warming the water up if you've been in there for a while and it's starting to get cold and you need to heat it up. Of course, assuming that your water heater has enough capacity to where you can still put more water in and that it's heated back up after that initial fill. Another pro is it's easy to clean up. There's no extra cleanup and it's convenient. It's already there. You're not having to do anything different than what you normally would do if you were taking a bath. It's already there. The cons are it's hard. The walls of the tub are hard, so it's less comfortable. And if it's a standard, rectangular type of tub, there's just not a lot of space in it. Like, most standard average size adults, their hips are almost touching the edge. So if you're trying to spread your legs out or do things like that to help the baby come out, to like move your pelvis around, that's hard in a standard tub. Now, if you have a bigger garden tub or something like that, it might be less uncomfortable, but just realize that a standard, just basic rectangle style tub is really not all that comfortable when it comes to being there for a long time, which you might be in labor. Helpers can only access you from one side for most tubs, meaning, like if the tub is set into the wall on three sides and you've only got that one side that's out, where you step in and out, that's where your midwife, doula, husband, whoever, that's where they all have to be. It's not a lot of space. And if they need somehow to get to you from the other side, it's hard, or they can't. So those are the cons, or two of the cons for an already existing tub. And then also it's shallow. So one of the best things for labor is to have the water up to above your belly level, because that gives that whole muscle the warmth and support of the water. Bathtubs tend to be more shallow than that, unless you just, again, have one of those nice garden tubs where you can really sink into it. Usually it's not going to be as deep as you want it to be. Okay. Now let's look at the blow up tubs. The pros of the blow up tub: they are softer and more comfortable. And some people even use these. Think like a kid's kiddie pool that you blow up and put outside in the summertime, how they're squishy and soft. That only better, because they are made even stronger and more reinforced, and the bottoms are usually padded in birth tubs. Kids' pools, usually the bottom might not be padded, but for a birth pool, the bottoms have an extra layer of padding so that you're sitting on softness, not on the ground. So they're just more comfortable. If you're wanting to lean over the edge, which I usually did, to where, your arms are up and you're leaning over the edge of the tub, it's soft. Your husband can be on the other side leaning into you. It's soft. Or if he's in the water with you, some people like to do that. It's soft. It's just more comfortable. Whereas, again, already existing tubs are not soft at all. Also, again, the water is deeper because they're made to have some really pretty high walls. I held it in if you're watching on YouTube, you see I held my hand over my head, but that's just from my hand down here. They're good height. They don't really go above your head. But if you're standing up, they probably go, I don't know, pretty close to the hips for most people. They're pretty deep. They're going to get over, the water level's going to get over your belly if you want it to. Okay. The cons of a blow up tub: well, it's less convenient. Okay. It's harder to fill. You're going to need a hose and an adapter. You're going to need the adapter to connect to whatever it is you're going to run the water from. So if it's your bathroom sink, or if it's from your shower head, or if it's from your kitchen sink, or whatever, however you're going to run the water to your pool, you're probably going to have an adapter to make it fit a hose pipe. Okay. So you're going to need a hose to run the water to the pool, and you're going to need an adapter. It's also harder to empty, obviously, because you don't have this nice little drain at the bottom like you do in an already existing tub. So you're going to need a hose for that. You can use the same hose if you want, but it's going to be dirty after that point, obviously, because you're taking the water out that's got, bits of this and that all in it. So you need a hose to get the water out of the pool, and then you're either going to need a pump, like a sump pump type of a thing, a submergible sump pump, or someone to siphon it if they're comfortable doing that. So that's how you clean it out. Of course, then you have to clean it. You have to clean the tub, which is a little hard. Even if you had a liner in it, which you should, even after that, you're still going to have to clean, or your midwife or someone's going to have to clean the pool. And it's just not that easy to clean because it's big and it's kind of inconvenient. It also takes up a lot of space. Maybe not a ton of space, but I mean, it's gonna take up a significant portion of your floor. But in my opinion, they are more than worth the trouble. Like, would I skip out on having the birth pool if I already had the tub, even if it was a big garden tub, just to keep from dealing with the birth pool? I wouldn't, because the birth pool is so comfortable. It's so nice. Now, for my first birth, I remember Lisa, my midwife, she talked about how like they had pots all on the stove boiling water because they had run out of hot water, and they were pouring it in, and they couldn't believe that I could handle it, because I guess the water, it was pretty warm, and I loved it. Like, I love feeling it pour in. But then what's ironic is my other midwife for my third baby, she commented on how cold the water was, which I had no idea it was cold. It felt great to me. I thought it was warm, but she said they were concerned with my baby getting too cold because the water was so cold. So I don't know, but either way, it was worth the trouble. It might be a little harder to keep the water warm because you can't just drain some out and run some hotter water back in. You've got to, bring the hose in or, heat up water on the stove or whatever and carry it back and forth. And that's not convenient, but it's just one day or one event, maybe 2 days, but it's just one event and it's not that big of a deal. I don't want you to be discouraged by those cons. I think that the birth pool is the way to go personally. And yeah, so I want to encourage you to do that if that sounds good to you. So all this to say, water birth is a great option. I hope that you will consider it. I hope that it's something that this is one less thing for you to worry about now, right? This is one less thing that you have to think, oh no, am I making a bad choice because I want to do something for myself? Am I being selfish by wanting to be in the water? Am I putting my baby in danger? No, you're not. We now have evidence. We had a little evidence before, but now we've had it all in one place. And now you don't have to worry about that. You can just decide, is water birth for you? Is it something that you want? And that's all you got to worry about now. So I hope this has helped. And if it has, let me know. If it hasn't or you have more questions, let me know that too. And I look forward to seeing you right back here next week.
Real quick, if today's episode blessed you in any way, would you head over to Apple Podcasts and leave me a quick 5-star written review? It'll take you less than a minute, but it's the best thank you you can give me. And it will help my show to reach more mamas just like you so we can all find God's best for our families. I'll see you right back here in a few days.